All right, everybody, what I'm going to show you right now is exactly how nefarious these gun control states are when they take away your ARs, your mag bans, your red flag laws, all the little buzzwords they do in the gun control world. What I'm going to show you right now is genuinely what they're attempting to do. I've got live courtroom audio that was from the Illinois Appeals Court today around ARs and mag bans. Now, this is really important, particularly if you guys are new to the channel and you do not have normal experience to these types of arguments. Because the whole idea is if you just ban something, nothing bad will happen. Because criminals don't criminal after all anyway, right? I mean, at least according to Jasmine Crockett, you're not a criminal if you commit crime. Yeah, I digress. But what we're going to walk you through right now is the actual live audio. So if you guys are down, you want to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on. We are pursuing freedom and on that cutting edge of the Bill of Rights and that thing that we protect so dear, that Constitution. And with that, let's get right in here. Make sure the audio video is good, and we will be right off to the races. All right, guys, listen. This is something that you have to understand as we get into this, okay? I wrote this down, so I want to be very, very clear about exactly what I said. The main point here is how the state is trying to meet what is allowed with what standard self-defense scenarios are, okay? They are trying to thread the needle, so to speak, your rights being on one side and the standard data for defense on the other. This is the key point that I really want to hit on this, okay? Basically, they're trying to meet their gun control down to what usually happens, and they're trying to find an equilibrium. As I've shown you that overall high level, I'm going to show you some actual audio excerpts here that are basically backing that point up. Okay? As we get into this, let me hear you in the audio, video, everything. It looks like it is just you. Notifications being pesky again, but Zanti, you and I are going to have a very good connection right now. Let's get into this. The first step is at 42 minutes. Everything is linked. Let's drop it. Let's go. Come on, Zanti, let's have some fun.
It remains undisputed that when fired in semi-automatic mode, the M16 and the AR-15 have identical capabilities and lethality. It's also undisputed that the military typically uses M16s in that semi-automatic mode.
What about, Ms. Hunger, the argument that one of the state's expert witnesses talked about the fact that they would never send semi-automatic firearms into battle, yet automatic capability is important?
The state does not dispute that the automatic capabilities can be used in certain circumstances, such as suppression fire, and also that that can have a utility. It's also important to note, however, that all of the experts, including the plaintiff's experts, agreed that that was rarely used, that automatic capability. And part of the reason is because when troops are sent into battle, they typically also have an individual that has an M249, which provides suppression fire. And so typically individuals that have the M16 are using semi-automatic fire, and it's only in kind of unexpected or rare circumstances that they would use that for automatic fire, but that is a capability that is used, yes.
All right, this is really important. I got to set this up for you because she looks like such a fool in this argument, okay? So the whole concept here is that AR-15s are these insane weapons that are exactly like military-grade weapons, which is why we can ban them, because the military uses them, even though the military uses M16s and the AR-15 is a civilian modern or version of it, okay? You have to understand, if you're not in this world, what she's trying to do is she's trying to say that AR-15s are the exact same as M16s. Now, we're getting into the very low-level details here. But in order to do that, the judge says, wait a minute, I thought M16s were full auto. M4s or AR-15s are not. Explain. The state of Illinois' response, come here. The state of Illinois' response is actually that, well, yes, M16s do have full auto capability, but because they don't use them that much, it's the same thing. Because you guys know that most squads inside military have something called the M249. That's a machine gun, just so you know. It's a full-on machine gun in a squad. And therefore, because they have the M249, they don't need to go full auto. So therefore, the M4 is the same as the M16 because the M16 doesn't need to go full auto because they have the M249. It is literally like, it's like saying you're not going to speed because you have a Ferrari in your squad and that's going to go real fast, so you don't need to go real fast. So you're the same as the Honda Civic. That's the equivalent here. They are actually arguing that point to say that you can't have something that's a constitutional right. And we're just getting started on the military part. Let's keep on going, because again, squad M249s. Mark it down, people. Now you've heard it.
An uphill battle, though, for the state. Here we've got a clearly erroneous standard of review. We've got a district court who held a 4-day trial, 16 to 18 expert witnesses, 250 exhibits. I think this is the first time we've had a full trial record. Any federal appellate court in the country has had a full trial record. Isn't that an uphill battle for the state to overcome those findings, like M16 is different than AR-15?
No, Your Honor, for two reasons. The first is because de novo review applies here, and I'm happy to get into that. But also, I'm happy to address any statement under a clear...
Okay, that part's not important. The judge literally just said, this is 3 judges, and they're looking at the state of Illinois going, explain yourself of why you're taking rights from people. And this is the best that Illinois can come up with. Okay, that's the entire point. And I left the audio. You didn't need to see the video. The point is, that's the entire point. Okay? When you have the argument of, so your argument is an AR-15 is the same, except it's not the same because you have a different thing that can do the same thing, but it might be the same. Isn't kind of an uphill battle? No, not at all, Your Honor. What are you actually talking about? Oh, don't worry. We've got even more. And again, if you guys are just now getting here, this is what they do to your rights. So be ready, because this 49 timestamp, I'm going to put it in the notes down there. We're going to go to 49 minutes, and these are just the highlights. Listen to what they say, and this one is about, are ARs useful for self-defense? Wait until the answer. All right, I'm actually going to make myself small on this one. Here we go.
We did not use those words in the opening brief, but I think we were responding to a point made in the response brief as to why de novo review did not apply. So that is my view on that. But going to, the statements that the district court made, I think one that we could start with is whether or not these weapons are useful for self-defense purposes. I think that was
ARs.
A big component of the district court's decision. And if you look at the reasoning, the district court says, the reason why these are useful for self-defense is because, quote, more rounds equals a higher chance of survival. And that is something you see in the plaintiff's brief here and also in their expert reports.
All right, so I'm going to come in real quick and interrupt, and then we're going to go right back to this because it's a really key point. Again, if you're new to the gun world, you have to understand what they're saying, okay? That's why I'm your guide in this experience of freedom. What they're saying here is because the argument is if you have a full capacity magazine, you're going to be too safe. Because if you are in a defensive situation, you don't need all 30 of those rounds because that's too much. That's excessive. That's the entire argument here. They are saying that the other side, the side of the freedom side, that's not basically that's suing the state of Illinois because of the infringements, they're saying, well, they need so much ammunition, and that's just simply not true. Again, listen to where they take you. Watch this.
Watt and Little both kind of make this statement. It's their view that more rounds equals a higher chance of survival for self-defense. But they don't have any evidence actually supporting that opinion. The defendants do. If you look at the Lucy Allen report at 185-8, she did an extensive analysis looking at the NRA Armed Citizen database and also news sources, as well as a couple of other databases, and found that in assessing the empirical evidence, on average, in self-defense encounters, individuals shot 2.2 shots. And when she looked across hundreds, there's only 2 incidents of more than 10 rounds. That's 0.3%. So in our view, it would be clearly erroneous to credit an unsupported statement by an expert saying more rounds is better for self-defense.
All right. Here's the thing. If you're not deep in the gun world, don't worry, I'm gonna guide you through this. If you are deep in the gun world, I can't wait to hear the comments on this one because you guys, you almost know where I'm going. The state of Illinois, and this is what I was saying about threading the needle between your rights and what they want, okay? Their premise is that you can't have more than 10 rounds in a magazine because if you do, you're being too safe. You don't need those extra 20 rounds or whatever amount of rounds it is, right? So what they say is, well, the average self-defense has 2.2 rounds expended. So you don't need any more than 3 rounds. So the idea that you have more rounds capable, that's just an excessive use of force, and we need to ban that. Here's the thing that I want you to understand if you're not in the gun world, you haven't heard these arguments all the time, because that's a lot of the audience that we have recently had join us. That is the average. So that means that 50% of those people were below 2.2 and 50% were above 2.2. So do you want to be in a position where a wife, a mother, a sister, a brother, a father, a husband is running out of ammunition when they need to defend themselves because it's just outside the averages? That's the point. They make these rules and laws because they're trying to fit you into these tiny little data points so we can infringe just enough to fit the data points, because that's okay. You never know when you need to go outside those, so we aren't going to have those extra rounds of ammunition because that's too dangerous for everybody else. Now, granted, having those in there are not too dangerous for anybody. They are literally inert. But the idea that you only need 2.2 rounds per self-defense incident, that means we're going to infringe upon all of your rights because you're going in the data. By this logic, you could reduce magazine capacity down to 5 rounds and then still be within the averages here. That's the whole point. Their argument for taking rights away from people is because they're not practical in self-defense because they wouldn't use them in self-defense, and because it's above the averages, so why would you need that? It's asinine. Because what if your family member were to die at the hands of a criminal, I don't know, like on a train in Charlotte, because you only had 5 rounds and you missed 4 and the last one wasn't terminal? That's the entire point. But the averages. It's a game. It's always been a game. It's control. And to me, it's asinine. But let's continue. I've got something else. 5247. I always provide timestamps, and I try to keep this as entertaining as possible because sometimes this is literally like watching paint dry. 5247. Yep, we are going. Let's get it. Here we go.
Other statements that are made by the district court, for example, the district court says that these are useful for self-defense additionally because of the features that individuals could rely upon in self-defense scenarios. But all of those features, if you look at even the plaintiff's expert reports, rely upon the assumption that there will be rapid, sustained fire. And that is just not the case in self-defense scenarios. Again, going back to the Allen report and looking at what actually happens in self-defense scenarios. For example, Watt says, the pistol grip aids in, quote, rapid follow-up shots. The flash suppressor helps fire follow-up shots at faster rates. The forward grip helps in adverse weather conditions. These are not things that happen in self-defense scenarios. If you're looking at self-defense in the home, which is where somebody in Illinois would use an assault weapon because we have a concealed carry ban that only allows handguns and not other weapons out in kind of the public. If you're looking at a home self-defense scenario, it's close encounters, again, 2 to 3 shots. You're not looking for long range. These features are not necessary, and also they're not chosen by individuals.
All right, this is really important, guys. I'm trying to weave this story together for you to show you what they're doing. This is really important for you to understand, particularly if you're part of that new audience. I just showed you how they go down the road of comparing an AR to something that's completely unrelated because of some really ludicrous, stupid argument. Then they say it's a 2.2 average on rounds dispelled or expelled during a self-defense incident. Now, they're going down the road of AR-15s are not needed because they aren't long range because, after all, laws. Laws say that you can only have criminals and do these things because there's no guns in criminals. So really, the only type of defense that's possible is inside the home because you can't carry guns outside the home. So you don't need extended range. You don't need extended velocities. You don't need extended mags because you only need 2.2 rounds. You don't need a flash hider or a suppressor because that aids in fast fire-up shots because that's... Okay, anyway. And then you don't need a pistol grip or a pistol grip on the front end, on the forend, because after all, you don't need accuracy. And what they're doing is the same thing they're doing with the mag bands. They're saying that, well, the average is only 2.2. And then now they're saying, well, guys, most of these things are inside in a close range. So you don't really need the AR-15. It's not up to you to decide what I do and don't need. Some people might buy an AR-15 for home defense because it's easier to manipulate for a woman, someone smaller man, someone who has infirmities, someone who's has a physical disability. There's lots of reasons why you'd want an AR-15 because it has more ballistics that will be more effective to defend yourself. It has easier follow-up shots. The recoil is easier to manage. There's lots of reasons. And what if you happen to miss a couple of rounds because you do have some sort of infirmity or some sort of inability to be accurate? What if it's dark? What if you have night blindness from firing in a dark room with a flash hider on it? There's lots of reasons. But the entire point, and this is what I'm trying to get to, they are making the active argument because all these things happen inside one little data set that they're presenting. Anything else outside the data set doesn't matter about your rights because it's not inside the data set. That's what I'm trying to convey. Let me know if I'm landing this plane. It doesn't make sense and it doesn't hold water on any way, shape, or form. But let me get over to the other time stamp I have for you. This one's at 55:22, and we will wrap out the extreme levels of stupid here in one moment. Let's get it. 22.
Data there, percent of self-defense situations, individuals reached for a handgun. 6% reached for a shotgun, only 4% reached for a rifle. And so we have empirical evidence in the record showing that these weapons are not necessary for self-defense. They're not chosen by individuals for self-defense. They're not even the most useful for individuals in self-defense. And on the other side,
is the Lucy Allen report focused on Illinois, or is it broader?
it's broader.
And
All right. And this is a very key point to wrap this entire thing up. Guys, you have to understand. What they are attempting to do here is the exact same thing they've done through all of the examples that I played. And I listened to the entire hour of that woman speaking just to get these points because it genuinely makes a really good, well knit together delivery. They are now saying 90% of defense is done with handguns. So because 90% is done with handguns, you don't need a rifle. There's no reason for a rifle because 90% is done with handguns. Not to mention the fact that ARs are heavily regulated in Illinois. ARs are also a newer addition to the data set versus handguns. And this entire concept is around putting your rights outside of accessibility when they don't match their data set. Their argument they're trying to make is an empirical one because they're trying to say that data sets can tell you what you can and can't have. So for example, 2.2 rounds means you can't have a 30-round mag. And since most defense situations are done with handguns, you don't need a rifle and you really don't need a shotgun by this mindset either. And because you don't need the pistol grip or extended velocities or extended range, there's also no reason for an AR there either. The bottom line here is these people are actively trying to tell you that if you fit outside the averages, you don't matter. Your rights don't matter. Because of some random data set, you can't have that thing that is your right because, again, that data set. That's the entire point. And I know a lot of the stuff in these lawyers is really dry. That's why I cut out most of it and I gave you the highlights. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me see some planes over here in the chat. And I will see you guys on the next one. We've got so much to cover. It is stupid. And thank you, each of you, for watching this video. I love all of you. Just the right amount that makes you feel comfortable. I'm Braden. See you later.